Hey guys, it's Will. It's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, thank you for finding me. If you could subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, all that fun stuff, that would be a huge help. Thank you so much. So what are we here to talk about today? It's a Blu-ray review. Yay! The bread and butter of the channel. It's a Tsui Hark film. It's a Van Damme film. It's an 88 Films release. Hell to the yes, it's Double Team with Dennis Rodman! So, I'm trying to like approximate the basic feel of this film, which is like a little kid who's eating 300 pixie sticks or whatever those sugar straws are called, and he's just running around going insane. Yeah, so this is a foil cover slipcase, as you can see there. It's a Region B release, so you would need a multi-region player if you're not within Region B. And it's limited to 3,000, so this is 2038 out of 3,000. That's the slipcase and like the little inserts. So I'm just going to talk to you a brief little bit about kind of like how this film looks and the bonus features on here. And then I will do like also kind of like a mini review, as I've been doing in some of these videos, where it's like sort of a Blu-ray review and sort of a movie kind of discussion, review, revisiting. I don't think I've seen this movie since it came out. I didn't see it in theaters, but I saw it on VHS, maybe at like a sleepover or something with some friends. I was a huge Chicago Bulls fan in the 90s, like I think a lot of people were. So Dennis Rodman was a big draw for this one for me. So you get that, you see the thingamajig, the poster that I busted out there for you, and there's like a booklet here that's limited to, I believe, the first 3,000, and James Oliver wrote the liner notes here, who has written liner notes for, I think he wrote the Maximum Risk liner notes and some other stuff for 88 Films, and it's called Hoop Dreams, The Bonkers World of Double Team. Bonkers is probably the exact word that I would use to describe this film. So this goes into kind of some details on like what was going on in the careers of the people involved at the time that the film came out, and how they're kind of the different personalities of, because, you know, Van Damme is known for having a kind of larger-than-life personality, and Dennis Rodman, as we all know, is definitely known for having larger-than-life personality. I think Tsui Hark kind of has a larger-than-life personality, and Mickey Rourke is in this movie, who's also really known for having a larger-than-life personality. That's him right there. And so I think that all of these things combined makes for, as I said in my review of Knockoff, and again, I'm not saying anything about the people involved in the making of this film, because I don't really know that much about their personal lives or what goes on behind the scenes, but if there were one word that I would use to sum up the feeling of this movie, it would be cocaine. I mean, it's just like nuts. So as Arna Venema has said before in commentary tracks and also my interview with him, Tsui Hark is a huge comic book fan. And so you see that a lot in his filmmaking. I've watched a couple of his movies in the past couple weeks, and I'm really starting to like appreciate and love his personal style, which is like, movies are fun. Let's have fun. Let's not take anything too seriously. Let's go crazy with the camera. Like crazy angles, crazy movements, crazy editing, like really vivid colors, lots of comic book influence, like comic book kind of style framing. Like there's even a bit in this movie where there's an edit, and it edits to like a shot that's small within the frame and then broadens out to fill the frame, which is very much like, to me, like a comic book panel kind of thing. But this is just kind of like a crazy movie. It's like a crazy 90s action movie. Let me tell you a little bit about what's in the release. The movie looks really great. And I think it looks very 90s, which is kind of cool to see it like in this HD presentation on like a big TV. Because you see things in this film that you don't realize you don't see in modern films until you watch the 90s one. Like, for instance, there's a lot of shadows in this movie. Like in just a scene and people in an office talking, there's like some shadows. And it's very more naturalistic lighting. You know, like I feel like a lot of action films today, movies like this, they just like light the shit out of everything, and it looks kind of artificial. And this looks kind of very like naturalistic almost, and you can see that kind of Tsui Hark coming out of the Hong Kong New Wave and being influenced by non kind of Hong Kong films and that more naturalistic like way of lighting things. It's just kind of, it's an interesting combination of like, there are scenes of extreme artificial lighting. Like there's a whole device in this movie where there's like a secret organization, right? And in their scenes, or in like there's some scenes in Rome at night, and you have like obvious lights coming down, and like blue lights here, and like, you know, bright yellow lights over there. But in some scenes there is this very kind of natural sense of lighting. There's a couple scenes where it really struck me as like we don't see that a lot in films anymore. But just like, you know, Tsui Hark was like a visual maximalist. Maximus Aurelius visualist, Tsui Hark, a visual maximalist. And so HD, you know, Blu-ray is like a great format for his movies because he really just goes crazy with the colors and the visuals. So there's an audio commentary on here by Audi Sorley and Chris Ling, who I work in the video game industry and have done audio commentaries for other Van Damme movies, and it's very much like in keeping with their other commentaries. It's like they're friends and they're just chatting, and they're chatting about Van Damme, and they're chatting about how much they like movies. And, you know, one of them, Chris Ling, I think, is a basketball fan, so he talks about Rodman. There's like nonstop references in this movie to the fact that Rodman is a basketball player and was really well known as a defender. Kind of like little meta in jokes within the film, you know. So like they tell you about who the different actors are and who the director is and who the screenwriter is, and like that kind of like, you know, the type of stuff that you would, you know, if you did some Google research and you compiled a bunch of information about a movie and then like shared it with a friend or whatever. It's kind of like that feeling to the audio commentary. To me, like the real prize of this is just having the movie, being able to reevaluate the movie, because this movie does not have a good reputation. I think it's kind of thought of as like a throwaway piece of junk from then like a typical piece of like ridiculous excess nonsense from the 90s. And watching it with a little bit of distance is actually really kind of interesting. One of the things that I think is really messy about this movie, but in a way that I found fascinating that maybe other people would find inconsistent or sloppy or bad, is the screenplay, which is a hot mess, but in a really interesting way. There are two screenwriters on this movie. One is Don Jacoby and one is Paul Moniz. Moniz? M-O-N-E-S. Moniz? I don't know how you would pronounce that. One of them is the Don Jacoby. He wrote like Life Force, you know, which is like the canon movie directed by Toby Hopper, I think, which is like space vampires and like erotic, like what is happening in this movie, but in the best way. And he wrote Arachnophobia, if you're familiar with that movie about like the spider attack. And he's like very much a genre writer and a high concept writer. And then the other guy is very much like a character and drama writer. And this movie actually, I'm going to kind of derail myself a little bit here and then come back to it, but it made me think of The Man with the Golden Gun, which is a widely loathed James Bond movie that I actually really enjoy, which is very much two movies. It's like a serious James Bond spycraft movie about Bond tracking Scaramanga, who's the guy with the golden gun. And then it's this ludicrous, over-the-top, flying cars, secret island, funhouse shootout, ridiculous fantasy Bond movie, like stitched together. And that movie had two screenwriters, and one of them wanted to do like a serious showdown between these two expert assassins, and one of them wanted to do like an over-the-top fantasy-style Bond film, and they ended up just getting... Basically, they each got half of the real estate, the screenplay, and it got stitched together. This movie is kind of similar. You have this completely over-the-top, ludicrous, like light sci-fi kind of thing where there's like this group of... So basically, this is a spoiler alert. I'm going to tell you kind of the plot of the movie. So there's this group of people who are all... They're all like super spies who are like... They've been injured and they can't be out in the field anymore, but they're too valuable to like kill or retire, so they're all forced to live on this island and work together to like give advice to governments around the world about like crises that are happening. It feels very much like a TV show, where it'd be like a serialized kind of like every week there's like a crisis that they have to solve kind of thing, right? And that lasts for maybe 20 or 30 minutes of the screenplay. And there are definitely points in this movie where so many factions become involved in the action where you're like, I have no idea what's going on anymore. I don't know who's trying to get who. I don't know why they're trying to do it. Like, this is just bedlam. But Tsui Hark, again, there's like this, okay, there's a scene at the end where Van Damme is wearing like this ridiculous wig and these ridiculous sunglasses, and I don't know if you can hear the sirens, but there's some sirens blowing by them. So if I'm talking really loudly, it's because the sirens are blowing by my house. And Dennis Rodman is wearing like a suit, and like there's all these, there's like Mossad and CIA and hired assassin agents all in this square in Rome, and they're all shooting at each other, and there's like horses running around, and this guy's firing a machine gun. There's an assassin on the roof. There's like back-to-back fight scenes where Van Damme is chasing all these people. There's like an El Mariachi thing where a guy's a machine gun in a briefcase. Like, it's completely insane, and there are definitely scenes where you're like, I have no idea what's happening anymore. I don't know who's trying to get who or why. But to go back to the screenplay, you have this kind of almost like James Bond kind of thing of like this secret organization, and are they evil or are they not, and they're apart from the governments, but they have tons of power exerted over the world, like very much like a Spectre kind of thing. But you're dealing with that 90s James Bond Pierce Brosnan world, post-Soviet collapse, and there's like post-Yugoslav collapse, which is 1997, so that was kind of around the same time that all that stuff was happening in like Bosnia and stuff. And like somebody steals nuclear weapons from Croatia, and like all this kind of, there's like multiple teasers in this film. Like teasers, kind of like a little opening action scene to get the audience involved in the movie, and then the plot starts. You basically have like two different teasers in here, because you have two different setups of like the James Bond type thing. And then the other plot element that you have going on is this really serious kind of thing that actually kind of reminded me of Face Off, which came out the same year as this film. And again, harkens back to The Man with the Golden Gun, of these two equally talented people who are very similar on opposite sides of the law, where you have this guy who's like this super assassin criminal, and the Jean-Claude Van Damme character, and they're like pitted against one another, and there's like a carnival scene, and there's a child involved, very much like the beginning of Face Off, and people die. And the bad guy is like, I'm going to get revenge on this Van Damme character no matter what. Now, Van Damme is married and his wife is pregnant. So the evil character, who's played by Mickey Rourke, gets a hold of Van Damme's pregnant wife. And so Van Damme is like stuck in this sci-fi. As you can tell, this is a really like convoluted movie, because it's like taking me so long to explain it, right? So Van Damme is in this like sci-fi colony, but he's got to escape to go and get his wife from the clutches of this criminal. And Dennis Rodman is like an arms dealer who's operating out of what seems like a gay bondage club in like Antwerp, where there's like, again, with like the crazy gonzo imagery of Tsui Hark, there's a person wearing bondage gear and a face mask in like a swimming pool, like fish tank inside the club, and it's very surreal. I really like surreal imagery, and it's very cool. But it's also kind of like, what's happening right now? But in a good way. Like, I swear that this is all in the best way possible. Like, this is a movie that you will watch with your friends with beer and popcorn, or whatever you like to drink with your, water and, trail mix. I don't know what people like to eat or drink when they watch movies. And just have a really, really fun time. But so, again, like I said, it's really like two screenplays stitched together of this serious thing of like these super spies going against one another. Van Damme's got to protect his wife, and it's like very serious and kind of violent, high-stakes, emotional drama, and then this ludicrous, over-the-top kind of fantasy James Bond type thing. And I think that the messiness and sloppiness and weirdness of the screenplay is really what defines what this movie is, as it is kind of filtered through the zany, over-the-top, crazy visual style of Tsui Hark. I have to say that one of the best training sequences I have ever seen in my life is in this movie. There's a part where you can basically see Van Damme's nuts hanging out of his little shorts. It's like doing splits against the wall. But the best part is when he's basically fornicating with a bathtub. That's the best way I can describe what's happening. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I think that bathtub lost its innocence when they shot that scene. Which brings me back to my word of the day, which is ding, cocaine. It's just a really ludicrously fun movie. It's called Double Team. It's got Van Damme. It's got Rodman. I'm really, really glad I rewatched it, because this is one of those movies that in my mind was like a pile of steaming shit. And it's, in a way it is. If you're going to be academic about it, if you're going to be too serious about movies, you're going to look at this and be like, this movie blows, right? It's like the, crappy, sugar-addled, confusing, like over-the-top version of Face Off for people who aren't as sophisticated as John Woo. I don't know. But which is not to insult Tsui Hark, because I think he did a great job, and his style is completely different than John Woo's, and it's like apples and oranges. But like, script-wise, there's a lot of similar elements to Face Off. With like the kind of like the light sci-fi but the serious drama and stuff like that. But it's not married really well like it is in Face Off. But it's a really fascinating movie. As someone, I read a lot of screenplays, I write screenplays, I studied screenwriting, I do it professionally, like I read screenplays professionally. It was fascinating to kind of pick apart the screenplay of this movie as I was watching it, because you can see what they're cherry picking. Like the ending scene really reminds me of the Lethal Weapon movies, because it's like violent, but it's undercut with humor, and it's got this kind of like classic kind of ending scene with like this crane shot pulling away and the light music and the joke to end like what otherwise could be kind of a disturbing and violent, very serious movie. Which again harkens back to Bond and The Man with the Golden Gun and all the Connery Bonds, where they would use humor to undercut the violence and seriousness and ruthlessness of the movie. But again, like, it's a very fascinating study if you're a huge fan of cinema. Tsui Hark does a great job. I've been really loving revisiting his films from the 90s. I'm going to hopefully get to the Once Upon a Time in China set soon. I Love Maria was just announced as getting a Hong Kong Blu-ray. That's a Tsui Hark film from the 80s. Hopefully I'll be able to get that, review that for you. My name is Will's Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society 88 Films edition of Double Team. Definitely check this movie out. If you're a fan of Hong Kong cinema or Van Damme or action movies or Rodman or 90s movies or whatever the hell you're interested in. We'll see you next time.